right, welcome to week number 5 of EDT 530. It's hard to believe we're already a quarter of the way or more than a quarter of the way through the course. I'm just going to use this video to go over what the work is for this coming week. This is an asynchronous week, as will next week be. The main focus this week is going to be starting to shift now from design and planning into production. And over the next few weeks, we're going to be taking a closer look at one type of instructional material a week and just looking at some of the concepts and theories underneath them and trying to improve the quality of those. So this topic this week is going to be on graphics. That does not necessarily just mean, pictures and drawings, but graphics also connects to text and to text layout and to organizing materials, basically any materials that are organized in a static way. So it could even be a single slide of a PowerPoint or something along those lines, or the layout of a Moodle or other sort of classroom management things. So that's going to be the main focus this week, is to take a look at sort of static graphic images and some of the theories behind that. And also we will be getting started on part 2 of the technology integration plans. And that's going to be basically focusing on needs assessment and trying to figure out sort of what exactly is needed in each case now that you've started identifying the problems that you need. So topics and objectives here, including sequence of activities. So first thing, and this is sort of a sidebar, is I'm asking each of you, in addition now to the introduction of the teacher that you have at the top of your Moodle, and hopefully many of you are also getting your instructional design documents there at the top of the Moodle. I want you to put one additional thing up there, which is a forum activity that you're just going to call feedback. And that is going to be a place where I can provide feedback to you directly inside of your Moodle. As we start developing things, that'll be the easiest way for me to customize and to get feedback to you. So just add that at the top of your Moodle somewhere in that top header section to have a place for us to have conversations. So in terms of the graphics, there is a document that is going to introduce what's called the Gestalt Principles of Design. For those of you who are in 515 in the fall, we did look at this document as well. So that'll be kind of a review for you. But everyone should take a look at that. It just introduces some of the concepts behind how we process visual images and some things to think about to help make those images easier to process. So, as you read through it, think about how the various principles that you're looking at might impact student learning. Particularly as our focus here is on online instruction. If things aren't designed well, you're not there to help students overcome any questions that they have. So making sure that things are formatted in a way that is as easy to understand as possible. So start with that, review that, go through that. Then we are going to use a database activity, and in which each of you is going to select one of the Gestalt principles. And I'm not going to assign them out, but if people have already started posting to the Moodle database activity and you see that a particular Gestalt principle has been covered a number of times already, maybe try to pick one that has not been covered. And there are 3 graphics that I've given you, and you're going to analyze those 3 graphics through the lens of whichever of the Gestalt principles you picked. And you're going to be asked to identify which one you think is the best example of that principle, which one you think is the worst example of that principle, and a little bit of explanation of why. This will also, trying to sort of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, this will also give you an introduction to the database activity, let you see how it works. It might be an activity that you are interested in incorporating into your own Moodle. And I'm going to also be trying to do that over the next few weeks, of modeling many of the activities in Moodle so that you get a chance to experience them and maybe think about whether it's something you want to include. So in this particular case with the database activity, you'll do some, sort of prepare your thoughts. You've got the reading, you're going to pick one of the Gestalt laws. Here are the links to the 3 images that you're going to analyze. and sort of through the lens of whichever principle you've picked. And then what you're going to do is create a new entry in our database here, and you do that by clicking on the Add Entry. And with this, some of you have used the glossary activity before. This is similar, except that in this case, there are several fields that I have already sort of pre-formatted in terms of what I'm looking for. So you're going to give the name of the principle that you've picked. You're going to give a quick overview of what that principle is about. Then I've got 2 places for you to choose which image you think is the best and the worst example, and then talk about why you picked that one for the best or worst and how you think it impacted instruction. And then you just put your last name in the last entry here, and you save that, and then that entry will be added into the database, and we'll be able to start collecting sort of all of these different write-ups and views on how the Gestalt principles work. So that's the database activity. So do the reading first, then come here and do the database activity. And then, having gone through that, you're going to then actually apply what you've learned. My guess is that most of you will probably have many locations within your Moodle for use of some kind of graphic material. Again, that can be a handout, it can be text-based, it can be image-based, it can be photograph-based, whatever it happens to be. But what I want you to do is, pick one that you need to create for your Moodle, and you're going to actually create that graphic. What program you use is totally up to you. It can be everything from just building an image in Word, which I have done a lot because it's available and it's there, and it can do a certain amount of things in terms of graphics. I've given a page here where I link to some free online graphics options. I know Canva has become kind of huge. So they're a good place to start if you're looking to just have some basic graphic tool that you could use to create graphics in. If you have access or some experience with some of the more advanced platforms like Illustrator or InDesign or those sorts of things, you can certainly use those as well. So it's really less about what software you're using and more that as you produce whatever the graphic is, that you're using the Gestalt principles to help make that graphic the best that it can be from an instructional standpoint. So you will figure out what you want to create it using whatever platform you want to use, and then the first of our production forums. And in the production forum, you will add a new discussion topic, and in the topic, you can either upload the graphic directly into the topic so that people can see it, or if you're hosting the graphic on a site like a Google Share or OneDrive or something like that, you can also just post a link to it, as long as everybody has access to it. I know some school sites only will allow people within the institution to view files that are being shared. But so one way or another, you will have the graphics so that others can view it. And then there's just some basic things, give some intro on the graphic, how does it tie into what you're teaching in the Moodle and so on. How did you create it? What program did you use? Did you run into any issues with that? And then a little bit about how you considered the Gestalt principles as you were creating that graphic. So, again, you're probably going to be creating more than one graphic or have more than one place for a graphic to be used in your Moodles. For this, you only need to create one example and upload it. And you'll get some feedback on it, respond to other people's posts. And from there, if you want to make adjustments, you can, but you can also then actually start incorporating these graphics into your Moodle wherever you see them being needed. Again, whether that's a handout or an image that you want to share or anything along those lines. So essentially our work this week on visual is start by reading the document about it. Then you're going to do some analysis through the database activity of some existing graphics and have some discussion there. And then you will be creating a graphic of your own where you create it and then upload it to the forum and get some feedback on it. So that's the scope of that instructional graphic work for this week. That's going to be the main focus. And then The other new thing this week is phase 2 of the technology integration plans. Phase 1 is technically due this week, and I will be starting to provide feedback on those over the course of this week. But phase 2 is all about needs assessment. There's a lot of information here on the assignment page. I'm not going to read through it all here. You can do that. There's a link to an extremely comprehensive and detailed page about needs assessment that's actually posted by through one of the U.S. Department of Education. You do not need to go into this much detail, but in the first several pages, there's some good overview information about how to conduct a needs assessment and what the goals are. So you can use that as a jumping off point, maybe kind of skim through the first parts of it. And then, as this is sort of continuing your work of picking a topic, what you're going to be doing is working on the needs assessment piece of it. So in a nutshell, a needs assessment is identifying the gap between where you want your audience to be and where they are now. So a lot of it is sort of analyzing, trying to get a sense of where your audience is right now in terms of the technology that you're looking to develop this plan about. And again, for some of you, that's a hardware need. For some, it's a software need. For others, it's a training need or some blending of those three. So, you're going to identify your target group. You're going to try to, as best as you can, develop data about where that group is right now. You do not need to conduct a formal evaluation or assessment of this. At this point, it can be more anecdotal if you wish. And then thinking about your goals of where you want them to be in the end, talk about then the gap between those two things. And that's really what your need is. You're not talking about how you're going to reach that goal at this point. You're not developing your plan. You're just trying to get a handle on here's where my target group is in this particular thing. Here's where I want them to be at the end. And here's how much distance they have to travel to get there. And so the overall write-up is going to be basically a paragraph describing your general issue, and that's going to be, you started that thinking in your phase 1, so just kind of recapping what direction you see yourself going. Give me a paragraph or two about your target audience, whether that's a group of students or colleagues or whoever it happens to be. 1 to 2 paragraphs talking about where your goals are, where you want them to be at the end. A couple of paragraphs talking about where they are currently as best as you can with whatever data you have. And then just sort of summarizing all of that in a final paragraph, ideally phrased as a goal, by the end of this semester or by the end of the month, this group of people will be able to do this particular thing at this particular level, is really where you're trying to head through all of this needs assessment. So that's the overview of part 2. And again, you have several weeks to work on this. It's not technically due until week 8, which is March 8th. I think that's basically 3 weeks from now, if you're watching this on the week of class. So just start working on that, and it'll be the next step from the work that you did in phase 1. And then we'll be moving on to phase 3 after that. So that is basically the overview for this week. Is just add that forum for feedback at the top of your Moodle. That's really the only thing you have to do in your Moodle itself, unless you're still working on stuff from before. Most of the work is going to be on instructional graphics, read, analyze, create, and post. And then along the way, you can also be starting to think about phase 2 of your technology integration plan. All right, so that is the summary of the work for this week or for the coming weeks. Be in touch if you have questions or concerns, and look for the next update next week, and we will go from there. All right, thank you, everybody, and have a great week.